Time doesn't erase murder. It just hides it better. They said the case was closed. They said no one was watching. But someone always is. This is Santana True Crime.
Welcome to Santana True Crime. Today's episode is a serious and important conversation about the Mexican Mafia, also known as La M, one of the most powerful and feared prison gangs in the United States. This is a topic that often gets misunderstood, oversimplified, or sensationalized. My guest today is William Noguera, who brings a firsthand perspective shaped by lived experiences inside the prison system. William is also the author of Through the Lens of a Monster, which is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere where you can get a book. William, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. Good morning.
All right, so William, this is actually the second series that we've done on prison gangs. I think it's important to get you on the show because, like I said in the opening, you see documentaries on the History Channel, you hear and watch shows about prison gangs, but I wanted to find out what the reality is with these gangs, how powerful they really are, what their reach is outside the prison walls, and what the culture is surrounding that gang. And through our previous conversations, you said that La M is one of the most powerful gangs currently in the prison system. Is that right?
That is correct, but that's actually a misquote. They are the most powerful prison organization. And I don't even say just gang. It's an organization that law enforcement, as well as the population in the prison system, respect. And respect in prison is based on in-prison deeds and really your potential to kill someone. La M, the Mexican Mafia, is at the top of the food chain when it comes to that.
Can we talk about the history of La M? How did it get started? And from your perspective, when did you first see it emerge when you went to prison?
Yeah, well, the M came into existence in the 1950s. There were a number of Mexican gang members from street gangs in the youth authority. And one of them was a guy by the name of Güero Buff. And he, along with a number of different guys from the Southern California uh, gang base, the normal street gangs, they came together to form La M, the organization, in order to really rule the prison system. And of course, they were extremely violent, extremely organized. And that is something that people don't understand. People always talk about these so-called experts, and they refer to them just as a violent gang that just do terrible things in prison. That may be true in one sense, but they're a multifaceted organization that has far-reaching hands into the outside world. Think of the Italian mob and how they from immigrants, went into the biggest corporations of America. When you have guys in the Jewish mob who, the richest man in America was Meyer Lansky at one point. He was a gang member or an organization, part of the organization. The Mexican Mafia is very similar. Their roots are, of course, to protect their people. But in the same token, they extort them, they do all these different things. But the mindset of the Mexican Mafia is to rule. And they do that without doubt in the prison system. So they started in the 1950s and they expanded when they were so violent that the California Department of Corrections decided to ship out their members into different prisons. The legend is that 5 members were shipped to different prisons: San Quentin, Tracy, Soledad, Folsom. And as they were spread out, they thought, okay, we just spread them out. And of course, they die out. The opposite happened. They spread. They made other members, and it just began to grow. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, until today, to become the most powerful prison organization. And again, I use organization because to call them only a gang is almost disrespectful to them, because it is disrespectful because they're not just a gang. They're an organized crime syndicate that is to be feared and respected.
Yeah, and I think that I can understand that misconception because when you think about the Italian mafia, you think about more white collared crime, them getting involved in unions, and most recently there was federal indictments about illegal gambling where they're setting up these high stakes poker games that were rigged. And so I see your point with that, where people associate those as a big conglomerate that are very controlling and have their hands in traditional business, where I think the perspective of La M or the Mexican Mafia for a lot of people is this prison gang that, yeah, they've got association with the Serenos outside, but it doesn't go further than that. And you're saying that they've got reaches far more than that.
That is completely inaccurate. So let me explain it's almost eye-opening, but in the prison culture, think of the prison culture as a world in its own, a micro society. In that micro society, the MA is the most powerful organization. They rule the entire Sureño gang members of all Southern California gangs. So there's a couple of gangs that have said, look, we're not going to get involved in that. And they've been green lighted. What that means is anybody who sees that gang, kill them. But the majority of the gangs in Southern California, and there are hundreds of gangs with thousands of foot soldiers. We're talking 500,000 foot soldiers. They are all loyal to the Mexican Mafia. Why is that? In the 1970s, the Mexican Mafia, they already had a number of members. They have members now between 350 to 500 members. These are not to be mistaken with the federal system's Mexican Mafia, although some of the members interact with each other, and it's not the same organization. It is a branch of the California prison system, Mexican Mafia. There's also the Arizona. They made their own Mexican Mafia, and they have another section called the New Mexican Mafia. These are not the guys I'm talking about. The California-based Mexican Mafia, who is where it originated from, is the most powerful. So think of this. You go into the prison system as a gang member of Southern California, and this is not exclusive to gang members. There's a lot of guys in the Mexican Mafia who were never street gang members. They were just guys like myself who came into the prison system. And I have firsthand knowledge of this because, well, my cellie, the guy I lived with for a while, was a made member. And I've had different made members as workout partners. And I consider them good motherfuckers. Those are the kind of guys you need next to you, because on a prison yard, you need a guy that lifts weights with you who is loyal to you. And although, look, everybody's expendable unless you're a made member, and even then you get killed. But when you know that no one outside of that group of Hispanic people is going to touch you, because when you're under 400 pounds of iron, the guy standing in front of you is a made guy. No one's coming near you. Now, it may be him that kills you, but other than that, you have to worry about nothing else. When you work out, you need a guy who's loyal to that group. He will never allow something to happen to you. You have to kill him to get to you. That's important in prison. But so think of this, that you go to prison and you have never been loyal to this particular gang, and you're against them. Well, when you go in the system, the entire system is based on their rules. They rule. They're the FBI, in other words. They are the ruling body of law in prison, and there are certain rules. So Southern Mexican gangs, they're called Southsiders. If you are in alliance with the Mexican Mafia, or you want to be one of their foot soldiers, you're considered a sureño. If that is the case, which there are thousands of them, they take orders from a made man. Sometimes there's not a made man on that car, and they put a guy in that yard called a llavero. He is the guy that holds the keys to the car. That means he's taking orders from a guy, a different place, who's a made guy, and they rule that yard. Understand the complexity of this and this spider web of delicate rules that work. So, and it's further than that because since the 1980s, these made guys that are from a neighborhood, and remember, in Southern California, these gangs are constantly fighting each other in the streets. There was an order given by the Mexican Mafia to all gangs in Southern California, and it was stop gangbanging. There will not be one more shooting. If you do a shooting, you do any kind of gangbang in the streets, you come in here, we kill you. That order was immediately, it was law. And there was no gangbanging in Southern California for a very long time. Because you remember, when these guys come to prison, all rivals go away. You become a foot soldier and you work your way up. It's called making your bones to become a made member. There are no gang rivals. They're all brothers. They're all together. And the Southern Mexican car, the Sureño car, there are no petty issues. If you're going to hit one of you guys, you have to ask permission. And this rule is law. If you don't follow it, you die. So all these guys get out, and what do? It's the perfect thing in the same structure the Italian mob used. They began to extort the neighborhoods, and of course, they started businesses, concrete, unions, like you mentioned. The Mexican Mafia, their made members came out, they go to their own neighborhoods, and they began to immediately extort the people there. From there, it grew to drug deals. Every neighborhood is taxed. That means you have to pay. If you sell a certain amount of pot, you pay a certain amount of tax, and you're protected in theory. This is how it goes. And in prison, you go to a yard, and if you're dealing drugs, you have to pay these particular people a percentage of what you're doing to be allowed to deal. And the other one dealing on that yard is a Hispanic guy. Now the blacks, excuse me, the blacks have their own car. The Northern Mexicans may have them, but the ruling body of that yard is the Mexican Mafia, the Sureños, the Southsiders, and that is really how they've done it, through violence, extortion, murder, assault, prostitution, gambling, racketeering. It's something to behold. And if you're a student like I am of all of this, you cannot help but be impressed with the organization that's behind all of this.
When you talked about some of the rules that have to be followed or else there's death, can you go through some more of them besides, not being able to attack someone without permission?
Yeah, nothing happens on a yard, on an active yard. So there's a difference. Now in the California prison system, in the past, there were just, you went to yard because the prisons were set up different. You had San Quentin, Folsom, Tracy, Soledad, Vacaville, Men's Colony, Chino. These prisons in those days, you basically were on the main line, general population, and you went out to yard. There's a couple thousand guys out there. The new prisons, for example, let's say Corcoran. You have Corcoran, and Corcoran has 4A yard, and that's 1,000 guys in that yard. Those guys in that yard can't get to another yard. So all of these yards in the past were all active yards, and they were ruled by these guys. So first of all, if you bring drugs in, they get a percentage. If you're going to move on someone, you ask permission. If you have an issue with another race, you go to your people and they go to their people and say, we have an issue. This guy did X, Y, and Z. There needs to be a retribution paid, or these guys go at it. If the other race says, no, fuck, you're not touching that guy, then we go to war. Made members, no homosexual activity. Now, they may use prostitution in prison to make money, but they will not get engaged in it. Made members can't use drugs. They can sell it. They can be behind the distribution of it, but they can't use. Although that rule's not usually followed, these are the general rules. You can't steal from other people. You can't. There are this whole vanguard of rules that come down that you must abide by. When I was at San Quentin prison and I was in an active yard, the guys there follow these rules to a T. You worked out with your people. You could say hello to someone else. You can even say, hey, make a deal with somebody outside your race. But sitting at a table with them, working out with them, anything besides just the high by, you're breaking rules because they don't want anybody aligning with anybody else. It's about your race because race is going to get an issue with that freaking race. It just always happens. And you're going to have to try and kill the guy who's been your buddy all this time, because if you don't, you're showing disloyalty to your car, to your race, and they're going to kill you. It's a dog eat dog world. And I could sit here for the next 2 years and talk to you about all the little nuances and rules, and you still won't understand it, because to understand the rules, you have to go through a process called klecha. And klecha means learning. In that learning, you understand all the rules, the bylaws regarding black markets, who sells, who doesn't sell, what you can get in that open market. In prison, you can get whiskey, you can get wine, you can get cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, prostitution. You can get whatever you want in prison if you're willing to pay for it. All these different nuances of who you can go to, who you can't go to, who rules that car, how much influence is there, who runs the yard. You have to be able to go on a yard and within minutes figure all this out. If you don't, most guys die. They don't make it. I spent the whole time studying this and studying the behaviors, so I understood how it went. And it wasn't that I was taking notes. It's something you learn by watching. And let me tell you, when it comes to prison culture, the most feared, and I mean feared, is the Mexican Mafia. Now, there are other gangs that have splintered. Now we have in the prison system what's called S&Y yards, special needs. So at first, those are considered protective custody yards, where child molesters went, all this other stuff. That is no longer the case. Now you have a number of men who used to be Sureños or Mexican Mafia, who were politically ostracized for whatever reason, a grab for power. You know, think of it when you were in law enforcement, you had probably a band of guys that stuck together. And at some point, one of those guys got ostracized for whatever reason. You guys didn't go out and stab him. In this world, they do. And that person can't hang around the same yards, because once they draw steel on you, everybody knows that that guy, since he was a made member, he's going to try and kill you every single time. And he probably has a crew as well. So the entire crew is put on an S&Y yard, a special protective yard. But those guys filter out all the child molesters, all the weirdos, and everything else. So now they have a yard that they rule with 1,000 men on it. And now the war begins. At some point, the other guys who ostracize them, they also get themselves put in a bad position. And they end up coming to an S&Y yard. Now there's a war going on with these guys. It's no different than the war that was going on when they were on the main line. They hated each other then, they hate each other now. So all these complexities exist on these yards. And you have to understand the M, whose main members are known as carnales. Carnal means brother in Spanish, or pili. All these names and all this stuff is serious as a heart attack.
So you mentioned prostitution that they controlled as well. Is this prostitution of other inmates, or is this bringing in prostitutes?
Both. It is inmates that sell themselves for money, and they don't actually promote it. They tax it. They tax everything. Anything that comes to prison, they get a piece of it, because, well, you got to pay the big lion or the big wolf, alpha wolf, on the yard. But there have been cases, and on death row it happened a number of times, where female officers will sell themselves to be with an inmate. Now, they may like the inmate or convict, but they're being paid to do so. And a number of occasions on death row, the female officers were caught inside of a man's cell with the door closed having sex with him. Happens all the time. You would be extremely overwhelmed with the type of things that happen in a prison yard or in a prison setting where people say that can't happen. That's a lie. Well, on death row, an officer by the name of Christopher was indicted on a number of federal charges for bringing cell phones in. This guy was bringing in 30 to 40 cell phones a week into the prison system. Now imagine you buy a Samsung phone for 150 bucks. In prison, that phone goes for $2,000. You're a correctional officer. You've been divorced. You have a wife and kids who you have to pay support for. By the time you get done paying the rent, the mortgage, the bills, the wife, you're out of money. It becomes very tempting when a guy who you know is not going to talk to anybody tells you, listen, you bring me in 10 phones a week. We'll give you the money. It's 1,500 bucks. Buy us 10 of them. When you bring them in, we'll give you $15,000. That's a tempting thing. And, it's not like you're on the street and they have cameras and there's, all these sting operations. You know who the guy is because you see him every day. You see what he does. You know what he runs. Does he run phones? Does he run drugs? That's how staff gets involved. It's not something that happens every single day, but there have been a number of indictments over the past few years where officers become associates of these gangs in order to bring things in for purely financial gain.
So about that process, so I understand that's very common that these officers are bringing in. Are they using like the Sureños and these gangs on the outside to facilitate that, like the payment? Or, I mean, if you're paying someone $15,000 in cash, I assume it's cash and they're not, you know,
Well, you would think so, right? But
to
some guys
avoid
aren't
the
the sharpest.
electronic record.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. Some of these guys are not the sharpest pencils in the box. They use PayPal, they use Venmo, and they use Zelle. And of course, there's a pay. That's how they actually arrested Christopher, who people want to look it up. Could Google San Quentin death row officer Christopher, and there was an indictment there. And how they caught him was, and they hit him with federal charges, was because he had wired money, or someone had wired money to him across state lines. When you use wires like Zelmo, Venmo, and this, it's a federal offense, and that's how
Right.
they caught him. That's how they charged him. They caught him because sometimes people in prison talk to each other, and that is the biggest problem there is that you tell someone and you think this guy's going to keep his mouth shut, and he really does. He doesn't go to the authorities. He's not a snitch or an informant, but he tells his best buddy, "Hey, look what Bill and freaking Santana are doing over here." And the guy's like, "No shit, yeah, they're making a lot of money." Oh, okay. And then 2 or 3 months later, that conversation goes to another guy. "Hey, man, well, Bill and Santana, they're making some serious money." It begins to spread. Along the line, they find a guy who's not very solid, and he goes to the authorities and tells them for a favor what's going on, and that's how people get nailed.
Yeah, I guess it's surprising yet not surprising that people would do that and not, they're I guess when you're looking at that process like that, using these apps, I'm sure they become so common and it's a lot more convenient to say like, "Oh yeah, you know what? I'll send over $15,000," and you get into the system that works at the time and you're not thinking about, well, wait a minute, now I've gone to federal charges from like what you're saying because of the wire transfers. And now I've created this electronic record that's pinned me to this organization.
Yeah, and it's happening now. It's easier for law enforcement to trace transactions. In the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, even early 2000s, it was a cash payment. There is no way of tracing it. The money's coming from people on the street who are drug dealers. And usually what the convict does is when he gets staff member, even look, it isn't always a correctional officer. It could be the cook at San Quentin. One of the cooks, what came in every day, was caught. He brought in like 35 cell phones. He had 2 ounces of methamphetamines. And again, you don't make a lot of money as a cook. It's very attractive when someone says, we'll pay you $15,000 every other week if you just bring this stuff on. And it's just basically clearing your pockets. Of course, there were at one point canine units that were brought in to sniff these drugs out or the money out or whatever. But until someone raises a red flag and says, this is happening, it's business as usual. And remember, San Quentin is a prison where you have 5,000 inmates. Or you did at one point, and you have 1,800 staff members. That's a lot of people to keep track of in this world. And staff members are there 8 hours. If they work a double, it's 16 hours. It's very difficult to see and understand what is happening because you're not part of the process. You're just an outsider looking in. What goes on in prisons, like it's interesting for me to hear the warden of a prison talking about, well, I'm an expert at this, and that. No, you're not. You're an expert at theory. When you get a guy who spent as much time as I did in there, you understand the complexities, what is happening. The warden, even if he looked like me, he walked up the yard, he'd be killed in 6 days because he wouldn't understand how to act with these guys. You just can't walk in there, hey, fellas, I'm here. It doesn't work like that. You have to understand the system in order for you not to step on someone's toes, because the penalty for stepping on someone's toes in prison is death. There is no, hey, we'll forgive you this time and tomorrow. No, it's absolute. Even for made members of the Mexican Mafia. Look, there was a guy by the name of Man, and he went to LA County Jail. Good dude, stand-up guy. Someone floated the idea that he had talked bad about Joe Morgan, who was known as Pegleg at the time he was running the Mexican Mafia. Was it true? Probably not. But then again, it may have been true. They got 2 guys, one of them being Rene Boxer, to catch him in the visiting room while he was cuffed up to a chair talking to his attorney, and they both came from both sides, and they stabbed him nearly to death. They hit him like 38 times. He lived. Is Man a bad guy? No. He's a solid dude. He's a made member, a killer. But because he stepped on someone's toes, he rubbed someone the wrong way, he ends up getting nearly killed. And this is the way that world works. It's so violent. It is a world that you'd have to be pretty much crazy or power hungry to get involved in, because at some point, someone is going to be jealous of you. Someone's not going to like you. You stepped on someone's toes at a grab for power, and they're going to put your name in the hat, and someone's going to come after you. It's very rare that a made member makes it to the ripe age of 80 years old and then dies of natural causes. There's one case of a guy, his name was Sana, and Sana was a made member from Orange County. I knew him. I was his cellie. He passed away a couple of years ago of old age. But he was the most crafty, intelligent, and aggressive member I had ever met. He was not the guy that you would think, oh my God, that guy, you got to fear him, because he wasn't very big. He wasn't overly aggressive in front of you. But the IQ level of this guy was incredible, extremely intelligent. He could have been a Fortune 500 company CEO. And he ran the mob in that sense. Think of Meyer Lansky. That's the kind of guy you're talking about there.
So when you got on the prison yard at 18 or 19 years old, however old you were, and you got introduced to this whole new culture, how did you navigate and learn these rules? Did someone sit down and explain it to you, or what was that process like?
Sort of. I went into the system in 1983. And as you know, I spent 42 years in the prison system. I was extremely young. I was a teenager. But the one thing I had going for me was a mannerism. I was serious as a heart attack because I was angry. I was extremely angry. And I had rules that I lived my life by. Extremely disciplined. I was a workout fanatic, former hot keto middleweight champion. When I went into the system, people knew this right away. How they knew was because the language that I spoke, and that language was violence. So I was in a module, which is a unit for young gang members. And I was not a street gang member. I was the leader, and I formed the group of a one of the most sought after high end car thief crews in Southern California. But I was very aggressive, and I had these rules I lived my life by. One of them was, you are not going to rape anyone, man, woman, or child, on my watch. And I mean my watch because if people called me a disciplinarian because of the way I am. So what happened was it was Sunday. I was taking a shower. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. It's in my book, Escape Artist. But these guys came in to the shower area. There was a young boy. He couldn't have been more than 18 years old. Hell, he looked like he was 12 years old. And one of the guys, who happened to have been black and a gang member, saw me in there. I was showering, and he basically told me, "Listen, Matt, this has got nothing to do with you. This has to do with this cracker." He was a white guy, and I could see how scared the white guy was. And he begged with his eyes, "Help me, brother. I could tell you that I'm not letting anybody get raped. I don't give a damn what race he is. It's just not going to happen." So I told the guy, "Look, no worries. It's got nothing to do with me." I could see the fear in this kid's eyes that was standing there in the shower area. He had his clothes on, but he was hiding there, and they found him. I began putting on my shoes. Long story short, as soon as I told the guy, "Hey, your business is yours," and he relaxed, I hit him with everything I got. I pounded him into the concrete. As I was beating him half to death, his partner jumped on my back. It didn't take long for me to disable him, break his ribs, shatter his jaw. And as I hit him, and I don't know if you can see or not, the other guy sliced me with a razor blade. And I turned around and, well, put him in a hospital. After this happened, the staff members thought, "Okay, you want to be a tough guy? Great." They threw me in Module A. Mod A was considered Blood Alley. Most of the members of people there were Sureños, Southern Mexicans, but members already associated with the Mexican Mafia. They were foot soldiers. So when I was placed there, the bigger joke was they even stuck me in a cell with a made member. That made member was Eddie Romero. He was known as Monster. Highly intelligent, extremely aggressive general or captain of the Mexican Mafia. And it took about 4 days for me to get there after going through the process of getting to that. And then he sat me down. As soon as I walked in the cell, he knew who I was. He said, "Tell me about that incident." And when I told him exactly what I told you, which is no one's going to get raped when I'm around, he said, "I like your style, man. Grab a bunk." And from that point, he began schooling me. And it wasn't like, "Let's sit down, let's go to school." No, it was during our talks. We would work out together. And since I was not a made member and I was not a member, peace of mind is invaluable in prison. He was able to bounce ideas off of me. And I would tell him, "That doesn't sound good," or, "Man, hey, that could be a problem." And I would give him all the angles of what he was thinking. It's good points, it's weak points, it's strengths. And I formed a relationship based on that. That's where I began learning. And of course, I had to prove myself in that place. They'd already heard the rumors. They want to see it for themselves. And there was a guy in that cell named Bugs. And he was a crazy son of a bitch, 6'2", about 230 pounds. He was an associate of the Mexican Mafia, and he tried me. And I could feel something was going on. I talked to Monster, and he said, "Look, I can't defend you." And I said, "I'm not asking for defense. I'm asking you to give me a green light. I know who this guy is. If he fucks with me, do I have your permission to handle my business? He looked at me and said, handle your business. So it turns out that he and I got into it, and I put him in a hospital. And he made the terrible mistake then of talking shit about Monster in another unit. And Monster said someone would go there and kill him. And that's basically my introduction. Once people knew who I was associated with or who my workout partner was, kind of his respect came to me. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I was not a Boy Scout. I was the tier tender. That means if anything was moved on that tier, it went through me with the blessing of a made guy. So I got my introduction to the prison system, to gang life and everything else from within that perspective. So when I tell you what things are, it's because that's the way they are. I learned from one of his leading professors, Eddie Munster.
In the tier tender, is that what you called it?
Yeah. So the tier
you
tender is the
explain
guy
that?
who, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. So someone has to clean the freaking tier. In the tiers, you have in this particular module, you had all the cells against one wall, and there was a tier or a cement walkway, if you want to call it. Someone usually cleans that. And the staff members don't want people throwing lines back and forth. So they let a guy out. He's in charge of sweeping the tier, mopping the tier, keeping it clean. But they also know that that guy is also a runner. He will take knives from one place to another place. He'll move drugs. He'll send kites. He'll get a message from you, take it to, Billy Bob Thornton over here. And he exchanges information. He's a valuable asset because everything usually revolves around him doing it for you when the doors are closed. Also, he receives a percentage. For example, I want to send you 5 joints, for example. And I don't touch that. That is another rule. You do not touch anything going to somebody else. Now, the guy is sending it to you will say, hey, Bill, man, this is for you, bro, for handling your business. I appreciate you. Just respect. I don't open. I put it in my pocket and I go do my business. When I get back in my cell at night, I open it up. There's probably a joint or two, some heroin, some cocaine, whatever it may be, is there. After a whole night, I usually came back, my pocket's full of stuff. The cops knew that was happening. They wouldn't touch me because ultimately they got to come on a tier. And if you got one of these guys pissed off at you, he could easily kill you. It's been done before. So I was the tier tender. They used to call it for the Hispanic car during certain hours, Bill's got the broom, meaning that my door opened and I came outside. And everybody knew that for that particular car, I was running the show on the blessings of Eddie Munster.
That's really fascinating. So I just wanted to clear that up, that's actually a prison appointed job and not a Mexican Mafia appointed position.
Well, it kind of is because they know that no one goes in
Not
that
directly. Yes.
Yeah, they rule it up. Believe me, if some other clown says, well, I need to go on the broom, fuck you. You're not going on the broom. This guy's handling business. And it's that simple. They may not have made the rule who the tier, but they usually took over the position. And sometimes even Munster would come on and say, hey, Bill, come over here. What's going on? I need to get on the broom. Hey, right on. I tell the cop, hey, open the 5. And I walk in, close the door, and he comes out. He normally didn't because he didn't want the attention because he was a made member. With me, I'm just the kid. The cop, it took him a long time to figure out that I was actually, moving everything. It's nothing that I'm proud of, but it is what got me the experience that I got. Now, it took a while for me to mature, understand the deadliness of this particular group, and I was able to survive on an active yard, really with no affiliation or no loyalty to anybody. Now, if there was a riot on that yard, and I mean a real riot, I'm going to defend my car because those are my people. That's the way it is in prison. If you don't do that, you're never coming out to a yard. You're going to go to a protective custody yard, and someone's going to kill you. Is it what I believe in? Yeah. I believe in protecting my car. I believe in protecting the people that have been loyal to me and protect me. Because in prison, you're not dealing with upstanding citizens. It's not Mr. Santana and Joe Rogan and all these great guys that are from different races, and they like you. In prison, race is everything. I didn't make the rules. I lived in that world. For me to have survived these 42 years and get out and be successful, I had to understand each world. And I also respect the rules of this world. I can't go steal something. I can't walk up to someone and just sock them in the face because they piss me off. These are rules I immediately adapted to. And that's why I've been successful in this world as well, because I respect the rules.
Well, that's a good way to wrap it up. You've done a remarkable thing of surviving a extremely tough environment for over 42 years, and now that you're out, you've transitioned and you've come out with 2 books now, you've done a few TV shows. How can we support you, and if you can tell us what you're doing now?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I have a TikTok account. Obviously, it's called Dead Body Society. Where I put up videos about things I saw in prison. I have a YouTube channel, also Dead Body Society. And my books, Through the Lens of a Monster, An Escape Artist. And I have a new book coming out next year. It's called San Quentin, Penitentiary of Horror. And please sign up for my free newsletter. You can go to my Instagram account, which is Dead Body Society, and also william.noguera.art, where my art is displayed. You can click on the link tree and sign up for the free newsletter. It gives you insights. But more than anything, I do want to say that, um, if it weren't for the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, towards the end of my stay in prison, of the classes they offered, the education that they offered, I would not have made it out. Yes, I'm very disciplined, highly educated. I spent my time in a library studying, but these classes should be supported. And I would encourage anyone who has someone in prison, a loved one, husband, wife, whatever. There are classes to help people out. All you have to do is ask for the classes. You could be a level 4 and want to come to a lower level to take these classes to really understand yourself. Because if you don't understand yourself, you're never going to rehabilitate your way of thinking. I don't mean to change. I haven't changed much. My perspective is different. My priorities, my value system is different now. And that is extremely important for the general public to understand, that these classes being given by the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation are essential for someone to make it. I came out, I'm on parole. I have a very supportive team at the parole office who also encourages me to do better and do more. These people should be supported, so that this system works and you have more people that come out of prison that are pro-social, proactive, and going to help the community. Remember, these guys are going to come out. If you ignore people in the prison system and say, they're there, they'll be 20, 30 years, they're never getting out. Those guys get out and they become out as bigger monsters. You want to make sure that we support people in prison, so when they do come out and they become your neighbor, because they're going to become your neighbors, that you have a person that not only do you want as your neighbor, you need him as your neighbor because he's loyal to the community. So that's really the message I have about the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. They are an organization that are trying and they are helping people, and I'm a perfect example of that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, and I think that could be another show that we do down the road, because that is important. You want people to come out with life skills and be able to get a job and be able to contribute to society in a positive way. So I appreciate you bringing that up. If you want to support me, you can like and subscribe to Santana True Crime. You can also pick up my book, A Murder on Campus, A Professor, the Cop, and North Carolina's Most Notorious Cold Case. That link will be in the show notes, as well as the links to William's books. Hopefully you will pick them up. William, thank you so much again, and have a good night.
Pleasure's all mine. Be safe. Be aware of your surroundings. Your life could depend on it. I'll see you next time.